The cottage expands the way it does when sleep is about to choose it. From beyond the headland, the sea gives one last patient push at the shore and then rests. On the hearth, a coal reflowers into a small flame that throws a steady halo. The wind at the eaves recites something like a prayer but asks nothing in return. Thalia lies down and pulls a blanket over her shoulders. The room does not grow quiet. It grows accurate. Each sound finds its honest size. The flames whisper, the timbers pulse, the world's slow chord just beneath everything. She exhales once, twice. The third breath is longer. The fourth is almost a note. Outside, the storm has finished teaching. Snow stands in soft parabolas along fences. Trees wear crowns that do not bend. The village, which had braced for trial, has been given a lullaby instead. High above, the frozen stars become visible again in the last indigo before day. They do not command. They keep watch. They do not blaze. They attend. And the attending is enough. The dawn at last draws its fine bright thread across the horizon. A single bird, not eager and not late, carries a note from one roofline to another. It hangs for a heartbeat in the cold and then belongs to everything. In that precise, generous moment, between dark and day, sleep and waking, winter and whatever winter becomes, Thalia dreams the quiet compass opening in her chest, its needle not pointing north or south but inward to where rooms of listening multiply without end. She will wake with it. She will carry it. She will keep doors for others to rest behind. And somewhere in the lanes of the upper air, far and near at once, a wind that once had many names drifts on in the work that has always been his, to polish the world until starlight can hear itself, and sleep can find its way home. Night arrives like a slow breath over the mountains, and the world begins to hush. Far to the north, beyond pine-shadowed slopes and white-capped ridges, the sky opens as a deep, lucid blue. The air is clean enough to ring like crystal. You can feel it. The gentle settling of silence, the pause between heartbeats when winter lays its cool hand upon the earth. Somewhere in that stillness, a door of wind opens. It opens the way a memory opens, without hinges, without sound, until a current of cold, pure air slides through the dark. It gathers snowflakes and fallen needles of fur, a faint perfume of resin, and the subtle salt of distant seas. It drifts across a sleeping village where fires have folded to embers and rooftops hold the moonlight like silver bowls. It slips past windows, worries no latch and rattles no beam. It only listens, only learns the shape of the world it has come to love. The wind has a name, though few dare to whisper it on the eve of a hard frost. In the mountains, old women knitting by lamplight close their eyes when they feel his arrival. Fishermen along the coast double their lines, then bow their heads. Shepherds on high meadows lift their lamps and sea breath become mist and mist become stars. Boreas. He is the hush in the valley before snow begins. He is the clear sweep of night that reveals 1,000 distant fires above. He is the hand that polishes winter until it gleams. And yet, for all his strength, he enters softly tonight. He follows the curve of a river, tracing its glassy surface where ice has begun to lace the edges. He flows around bare alder branches, over frost-bright stones, and into a grove where a temple once stood, nothing now but a ring of columns worn to quiet music by time. In the center of that ring, A shallow basin holds water that does not ruffle. It is a mirror set into the earth, and winter has burnished it to a deep, unblinking calm. Boreas pauses. You might not imagine the north wind knows how to pause, but he does, because pausing is a kind of listening, and listening is the beginning of all gentle power. He lowers himself, no feet, no weight, only intention, until the surface begins to skim with a skin of ice. In the reflected sky, constellations sharpen, as if the night has taken a breath and held it. For a long moment, everything is very, very quiet. A bell sounds, not from any temple, for that temple is long gone, but from a small cottage beyond the grove where a lantern glows. The bell is not a warning or a summons. It is a small, homely note that says simply, "It is time. Time to bank the hearth. Time to draw the curtains. Time to let sleep move across the floor like a pale cat and curl itself at your feet." Inside the cottage, a child kneels on a stool, face pressed close to the glass to watch the first thin sheen of frost climb the pane. Her name is Thalia, and she is an expert in the quiet sciences of winter. How to count the ribs of leaves where cold has traced them silver. How to listen to the timber of a house settling as the night nips its joints. How to fold a blanket so that it becomes a promise. She knows how snow makes the world sound farther away and closer, both at once. On the table beside her is a map drawn by a careful hand. You can see the thin lines of rivers and the broad ribs of mountains. A penciled coast lies like a sleeping creature at the edge of the page. At the top, someone has written, "The Ocean of the North." In the margin beside the word "North," there is a small note in her own round script, "Where Boreas sings." She wonders if winds sing to themselves when no one is listening. As if to answer, a thread of cold air slips under the door. It crosses the floorboards with the lightest touch, carrying the smell of pine and far-off ice. The candle on the table bends its flame the smallest fraction. Thalia's breath clouds the window and clears, clouds and clears. The rhythm begins to make her drowsy. She tucks her chin into the crook of her arm and watches the dark trees sway at the edge of the grove, though the trees are not truly moving. It is only the suggestion of motion, the way a dream moves even when the sleeper is still. Boreas regards the child. He does not like to be named by mortals. Names are a kind of tether, but the question she wrote is not a name. It is an invitation, and invitations are a kind of bridge. He crosses it. When the wind moves in kindness, it hardly moves at all. It loosens a shutter so that moonlight can spill through the seam. It fluffs the feathers in the straw mattress so that they remember softness. It draws the scent of the fields, sleeping under snow's thin veil, through the tiniest gap in the sill. Thalia's eyelids grow heavy. Her pulse finds a slower riverbed. The candle gutters. The flame leans toward the map, as if it recognizes a coastline it once licked with light. "Where Boreas sings," she murmurs, already more than halfway asleep. Where? Out beyond the cottage, the night is a lake, and above it the stars hang so sharp and clear that they seem to have stopped time with their shining. Boreas reaches up, not with hands, but with the old language of cold, and smooths the sky until each star's light pools like a tiny, tremulous drop on glass. These are the frozen stars. Not frozen as in dead, but paused, confident that their fire can burn without hurry. They trust winter to hold their brilliance steady, the way a careful friend holds a lantern so you may tie your bootlaces by its glow. The place where I sing, says the wind, because now he chooses to be heard, is where the world listens. The voice is not loud. It does not jolt. It is simply there, like the blue-black color of the hour. Thalia does not start awake. She smiles in her sleep, and the smile tells him she has heard. There is a bowl on the shelf above her bed, painted clay with a rim of pale blue waves, and in it are 3 white stones smooth as eggs. Boreas knows those stones. He remembers rounding their edges 100 leagues away, in a place where a river meets the sea and the sea meets the wind in an embrace that never ends. He left them on a shore once, and a child found them, and now here they are, proof that winds and waves speak to hands as well as ears. In the grove, the mirror of water has sealed with ice. Beneath the ice, the last breath of autumn is held like a secret. Boreas lays himself along the ground, and frost flowers unfurl. Tiny ferns, tiny stars, tiny seas with shorelines so crisp you swear you could walk their beaches if you were delicate enough to weigh less than a whisper. He draws a single line across the surface, and the line becomes a pathway. Not through the world you can touch, but through the one that opens when the mind has set its burdens down. Come, says Boreas, in the language that is not words. Walk where winter hums. Thalia sleeps, and in sleep she rises. The room does not empty. It becomes larger. The cottage becomes a shell, the grove a chamber, the night a cathedral with a domed roof of clear, listening light. The tiny sound of needles tapping a window becomes distant bells. The map on the table blooms. Lines grow into valleys, and valleys into music. She steps into the grove as easily as stepping from one shadow to the next. The ring of columns stands around her like old friends, their surfaces veined with quartz that answers the starlight in low glows. At their feet, frost spins delicate scrollwork. In the center, the ice holds the sky like a steady breath. Boreas is present the way a direction is present. He extends not a hand but a horizon, a faint curl of snowfall. Snow that does not fall only revolves, approaches her. In its quiet center something gleams, then resolves into form. You might call it a flute, though no reed has ever known such purity. You might call it a shard of sky, though it is warmer than ice and cooler than sleep. Take it, says the wind. A gift is a path. Thalia does not question a dream. Children have a talent for stepping through doors that adults no longer see. She lifts the flute. It is weightless and honest. It changes temperature until it matches the warmth of her hands. When she brings it to her lips, she does not blow. She only exhales the way one exhales before a wish. The flute keeps the exhale and returns it as sound. A single note low and round, as if the moon has learned to hum. The note moves along the frost, and the frost sings back. The columns answer with a soft chord. Their stone remembers sunlight and cools it into music. The thin pines beyond the ring sway, and each scale of bark adds a quiet counterpoint, like a choir of seeds asleep in the soil. Above, the frozen stars do not flicker. They listen so intently the note clarifies itself and grows. Boreas is pleased. He deepens the night so it can hold more resonance. He spreads himself across the ridges and valleys. He plucks at the edges of clouds until they become long, smooth strands of tone. The river, under ice, hears the song and finds an older rhythm. Ice does not break. It simply remembers that water is a song sung very slowly. What is it? Thalia wonders, though the wonder is not a question. What am I playing? The world, says Boreas. As it rests, the note expands until it suggests melody. Melody becomes a simple, circling phrase, nothing that insists, nothing that requires. It is the kind of tune a shepherd whistles without knowing, the kind a mother hums while drawing quilts over small shoulders. It loops the way breath loops, and each time it comes back to its beginning, the beginning is deeper, and the ending is nearer. As she plays, images gather, not sharp like noon, but gentle as dusk. She sees a white shoreline where seals sleep without fear, trusting the cold to keep their dreams anchored. She sees spruce tips bright beneath snow, green lanterns waiting for spring's hand. She sees fishermen moor their boats knowing that even a hard wind has a purpose. It scours the world, polishing it until light can find its way more easily across. Do you frighten them? She thinks, and her thought is part of the music. Sometimes, Boreas admits, winds should not lie, but fear is a door, and behind it is understanding. I do not come to break, I come to clear. The song travels. It reaches village chimneys where smoke rises in slender braids. It reaches fields tucked under a quilt of frost, where little roots dream of the long drink to come. It reaches the sea which is sleeping with one eye open as the sea does, and the sea smiles its great, patient smile and turns its broad shoulder so the swell becomes gentler at the shore. From far away something answers. It is not a sound Thalia has heard before. It is a tone woven of distance and blue. It rises from the north, where night meets night and a silver rim of dawn is only a rumor held by owls. It is older than temples and newer than breath. Boreas hears it, and if the north wind had a heart that beat the way a creature's heart beats, his would pause, not from fear, but from reverence. A sister wind stirs in that far place, a wind of green curtains and soft fire, the one mortals sometimes call the dawn's veil when it dances, the aurora's keeper. She does not come. She acknowledges. The sky above the grove takes on the faintest blush of color where no color should be. Not red, not green, not violet, but the promise of each. Do you see? Boreas whispers, and the whisper is a tender thing. Even the farthest listens. Thalia lowers the flute. The night does not grow louder. It grows more intimate. A small fox pads to the edge of the columns, curious and unafraid. A snow owl turns its round face and blinks, content. The ice in the basin holds the reflection of a girl and a necklace of stars and the suggestion, only the suggestion, of a figure woven of frost and direction standing beside her like a guardian made of night air. Will you teach me? She asks, and it is both the child and the dream speaking at once. I will teach you to hear, says Boreas. The rest you know. The wind gathers the notes they have made and lays them in a circle. A simple ring you could step into and out of whenever you choose to visit the place where the world rests. He leaves, in the shallow drift at the base of one column, a crescent of ice no bigger than a thumb, clear as a drop paused in falling. When the moon slides behind a cloud, the crescent catches what light remains and keeps it safe, like a seed keeps spring inside winter. Take this when you wake, the wind adds. And you will find me at the river's turning tomorrow, where the reeds make music like thin glass. Thalia nods, though nodding is not necessary in dreams. She knows the place, a bend where water slows and thinks. In summer she watches dragonflies there. In autumn she counts the leaves that choose that curve for their last spin. In winter she listens. Now she will go and listen better. The flute rests again in her hands. A new phrase wants to be born. It rises, then falls back, shy but sure, like the first snow of the year when flakes test the air before committing to a drift. She raises the instrument and exhales one more time, and the note she makes is so soft it seems to come from the winter itself. Boreas wraps the cottage in that note when she returns to sleep. He smooths the roof so the snow will lie evenly and the weight will not trouble the beams. He lingers by the window and writes, in the language only frost can write, a delicate pattern at the pane's edge, a compass made of fern fronds and tiny stars. If you looked closely, you would see that the compass does not point only north. It points inward, toward the midline of calm that runs through every living thing. The lantern dims. The ember in the hearth reduces to a single, steady eye. The bell in the cottage, somewhere in the wood, somewhere in the bone, tolls once more a hush bell, the kind that does not end with a silence but begins one. Outside, the sky remains. It will remain all night, unblinking and clear, each star a patient witness to the temple of sleep. The frozen stars are not cold at all. They are faithfully held. They shine not to demand attention, but to offer it. They listen with light. Boreas withdraws by degrees, the way tide withdraws from a forgiving shore. He traces the river upstream until the water tells him, in the slow grammar of current, that everything is already on its way. He loosens the reeds so that tomorrow they will sing more sweetly when she comes. He presses his palm, if a wind can be said to have a palm, against the brow of the mountains and feels them answer with ancestral quiet. In the cottage, the child sleeps a sleep that is not empty, but full of snow that falls without hurry, full of seas that breathe in long arcs, full of pines that hum with green though they show only black. The flute lies across her chest, or perhaps it lies on a shelf where such things go when dreams are gentlest. The crescent of ice waits at the base of the column, a promise cupped in the night's careful hand. And the north wind, who has many names and one nature, settles into the simplest of them all. He becomes a breath moving through a sleeping world. He becomes the low, invisible thread that keeps roofs snug, that keeps windows crystalline, that keeps stars steady. He becomes, for a time, the hum between heartbeats. Morning is nowhere in sight. The night is long. The world is listening. The song holds its circle, beginning where it ends, ending where it begins, so that when the next note comes, it will be exactly on time. Sleep drifts like snow over Thalia's senses, light, endless, and without boundary. The world she enters is made not of distance, but of depth. Every sound, every glimmer, every breath feels suspended between heartbeat and thought. When she opens her eyes, there is no cottage, no map, no bed. There is only white, stretching outward until it folds softly into blue. A wind circles her, slow, deliberate, as if shaping a path from air itself. She feels no cold, only the sensation of clarity, like standing in the place between questions and answers. From the horizon, a glint of movement approaches. A river, wide and calm, its surface layered with glassy ice. It bends through the plain like a silver serpent, whispering softly where the ice meets the air. This is the river's turning, the place Boreas promised. Curves not because of the land, but because time itself wants to linger there. The bend is a pause, a held breath in the flow of the world. When Thalia steps closer, her feet make no prints. The snow beneath her behaves like light, soft, unbroken, accepting. Each breath she takes sends a faint shimmer into the air, and the shimmer rises, becoming small, glowing motes that drift toward the river. They hover, waiting. Why do they wait? She wonders aloud. Because they are listening, says the wind. Boreas appears not as a man, nor a shadow, but as movement that remembers form. His outline wavers in the pale light, edges rippling like silk in slow current. When he speaks, the sound does not strike the air. It folds into it. You have come far, he says, though you have not moved. Thalia lowers her gaze, unsure whether to bow or breathe. This is the river's turning? It is where sound forgets itself, says Boreas, where every voice, wind, water, heartbeat, pauses and learns what it means to rest. The surface of the river begins to glow faintly beneath a skin of ice. Beneath it, faint shapes flicker, threads of light weaving slowly together, then apart. They move like thoughts forming dreams. Boreas gestures and the river answers. The ice clears where his motion passes, revealing the flow beneath, slow, deliberate, steady as the breath of the earth. Each current has a tone, he tells her. Every flow, every motion, every life. The river does not speak in words. It hums. Thalia tilts her head, listening. At first, she hears only silence. Vast, layered, endless. Then, beneath the silence, something emerges. A sound too deep for ears, too soft for words. Feels like recognition. Feels like home. It is beautiful, she whispers. It is everything, says Boreas. Even the stars move by its rhythm. Even sleep. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of snow and pine resin, faint but full of memory. The world around them seems to listen. The horizon widens. The sky opens like an eye half awake. Listen closer, Boreas says. Do not reach for the sound. Let it reach for you. Thalia closes her eyes. The hum deepens, and for a moment she feels the river flowing through her veins instead of blood. She feels mountains dreaming of height, oceans dreaming of depth, trees dreaming of stillness. She feels all of it breathing in time with her chest. When she opens her eyes again, Boreas is beside her, watching with the expression of a tide that has found its moon. What you hear, he says, is not new. You always knew it. You simply forgot. Why do we forget? So that we may listen again. He turns toward the bend in the river. The ice there forms an arch, translucent, glowing faintly with captured starlight. Inside the arch, the current swirls in a perfect circle, drawing frost into patterns that shift and vanish before they can settle. Boreas raises a hand, and the circle steadies. This is the lesson of the turning, he says. Stillness is not the absence of motion. It is motion understood. He looks at her. Would you like to learn? Thalia nods. Then play. He holds out the flute, the same sky-forged instrument she had received before, but this time it gleams differently, as though a hidden pulse beats within it. She takes it with both hands, and it hums, alive to her touch. When she lifts it to her lips, the river reacts. The current beneath the ice quickens, the lights beneath it weaving into spirals that mirror the breath she's about to take. She exhales. The first note leaves her like mist, settling across the ice. It glides forward, tracing the river's curve, then sinks into the water. The hum rises to meet it, and for an instant, sound and silence merge. A pulse of light spreads from the point of contact, radiating through the frozen surface like veins of crystal. Each new breath brings a different tone, high, low, round, trembling, until the whole river seems to sing in harmony with her. It is not a song made of melody, but of being. The notes describe the world as it truly is. The patience of snow, the wisdom of trees, the long kindness of the wind. You play well, Boreas murmurs. I don't know what I'm playing. Exactly. She lowers the flute slightly, listening to the echoes fade. What is the river telling me? That you are not separate from it. The words land softly, but they reverberate like thunder in her bones. The world seems to shift, not change, but clarify. She realizes that every sound, every heartbeat, every breath is part of the same unfolding chord. She looks into the river again. Beneath the ice, she sees visions forming in the light. Her cottage glowing in the night, her mother humming near the fire, fishermen setting sail beneath a frozen dawn. All of them shimmer with the same quiet rhythm that hums through her own chest. I see them, she says. They're all singing. They always were, Boreas says. But few stay still enough to hear. The wind lifts, swirling flakes into shapes, circles, spirals, slow-turning sigils of frost. Each flake catches the starlight, reflecting fragments of the great silence above. Boreas steps into the current of his own creation, and for a moment, he becomes entirely visible. Tall, pale, robed in light and shadow, his eyes deep as the poles. His voice is no longer distant wind. It is close, warm, like the heart of winter itself. You see the beauty of the world, he says. Now learn the weight of it. The weight. The gentlest snow can break a branch if it does not know how to fall. The softest word can wound if it forgets to listen. Power is not in the breath you take, but in the silence that follows. Thalia feels the truth of it resonate in her chest. The flute grows heavier, or perhaps her awareness of it deepens. She exhales again, this time not to make a sound, but to match the rhythm of the river. The wind stills. The stars above seem to hold their light a heartbeat longer. Boreas smiles faintly. Now you are learning to listen with more than your ears. The ice underfoot begins to change. Patterns bloom. Frost flowers, spirals, constellations, spreading outward in luminous symmetry. Each pattern hums a note, each note joining the others until the air itself becomes a song. Thalia feels herself dissolving into it, becoming one more phrase in the music of the world. She looks at Boreas, and for the first time, she sees not a god, but a presence vast, patient, kind, a being not of command but of care. "What happens when I wake?" she asks. "You will hear differently. The world will not be quieter, but you will know which silences to trust. And you, I will be where breath turns to wind, where rivers think before they bend, where stillness becomes song." The words flow into her like warmth, though the world around them remains cold and bright. She looks down at the flute. Its glow is dimming, softening. The river's hum lowers, a final chord sustained just long enough to echo in memory. Boreas extends a hand. In his palm lies the crescent of ice, the same gift he left by the column. But now it gleams brighter, containing a tiny spark of blue flame at its core. "When you wake," he says, "hold this in the light of morning. You will see what cannot be seen. You will remember the song even in silence." Thalia takes the crescent. It melts instantly against her skin, not into water, but into warmth that settles behind her ribs like a heartbeat's echo. She looks up. Boreas is already dissolving into air, his outline scattering among falling snowflakes. "Thank you," she whispers. "Do not thank the wind," comes his fading reply. "Simply breathe." The river begins to slow. The arch of ice fades into mist. The white plain stretches again, unbroken and vast. Thalia feels her feet grow lighter, her body thinner, her thoughts like vapor drawn toward dawn. Before she fades entirely, she hears one last sound. Not a voice, not a word, but a single note. Clear, steady, endless. It is the sound of listening itself. And then silence. The snow falls. The river hums. The world breathes. The dream holds. Dawn does not break, it unfolds. The first light slips quietly through the shutters of Thalia's cottage, painting the air with the faintest hue of silver. Feels less like morning has arrived and more like night has softened into breath. The world is still holding its last dream, and she is the first to stir within it. For a moment, she does not know if she is awake. The sound in her ears is not quite silence. It's something slower, rounder, like the echo of a song too gentle to end. She lies still, eyes half open, and feels the hush of the house. Every sound, the soft groan of timber, the sigh of embers, carries a quiet meaning she can almost understand. Her hand moves to her chest. The warmth from her dream remains there, faint but steady, a small pulse where the crescent of ice had melted into her. She exhales, and the breath feels new, as if the air itself is returning the greeting. Outside, snow has fallen in the night. It covers everything. The path, the trees, the low fence, the roof of the barn. The world wears silence like a fine robe. Every branch holds a soft burden of white, each weight distributed so perfectly that not even a whisper of protest escapes the wood. Thalia rises, slowly. The floorboards are cold, but not unkind. She crosses to the window and wipes a circle clear of frost. The forest beyond gleams. Above it, the sky glows pale, not blue, not gray, but the color of breath just before it disappears. The frozen river gleams in the distance, curving like a thought half remembered. For a moment, she feels the shape of Boreas nearby, not a presence she can see, but one she can sense in the stillness itself. The air listens, and she realizes she is being listened to. She presses her palm to the window. The frost there responds, blooming outward in tiny patterns, spirals, ferns, a compass made of stars. At the very center, a single shape forms, a thin crescent, identical to the one she had held in her dream. "Thank you," she whispers, not knowing whether she speaks to the wind, to the world, or to something within herself. The frost melts where her breath touches it, and sunlight filters through the droplet-streaked glass, scattering across the room. It lands on the table on her map. The paper has curled slightly from the night's chill, but the inked lines remain vivid. Mountains, rivers, the distant coast. Yet something new has appeared. Along the top margin, where once she had written "Where Boreas Sings," another line now glimmers faintly in the light, a thin, silvery script that she does not remember writing. "Where the world listens." The words shimmer briefly, then fade into the paper as though absorbed. Thalia traces the map's rivers with her fingertip, following their paths to where they meet the sea. She remembers Boreas's words. Asterisk, "The gentlest snow can break a branch if it does not know how to fall." Asterisk, she looks outside again and sees that every flake has found its place. Nothing bends. Nothing breaks. Everything rests exactly as it should. She dresses in silence, wrapping herself in wool and fur, then steps outside. The air greets her with a light touch, cool, crisp, alive. Her breath joins the cold like a ribbon of silver. The snow beneath her boots compresses softly, singing small, perfect notes with each step. She walks toward the grove. The path feels familiar and new at once. Frost clings to the bark of trees in lacework veins. Each time she brushes a branch, snow falls in slow spirals, turning sunlight into glitter. The forest seems awake but tranquil, breathing in long intervals. When she reaches the edge of the grove, the air stills, as if the world has drawn a deep, reverent breath. The ring of columns stands as before, patient, weathered, half buried in snow. In the center, the basin lies covered in a perfect sheet of ice. She approaches and kneels beside it. Beneath the ice, faint shapes move. Light ripples like water even though nothing stirs above it. When she leans closer, she sees her own reflection, but layered with something else. For a heartbeat, the outline of the north wind appears beside her reflection, faint as breath on glass. "Boreas?" she whispers. The reflection flickers, then steadies. His voice, when it comes, is not in the air but inside her ribs, a vibration she feels more than hears. "I am here," it says, "in the spaces between." Thalia closes her eyes. It feels different now. You are listening differently. The silence that follows is warm, expansive. She realizes it is not empty. It is full of subtle motion. Snow settling on branches, the pulse of the frozen ground, her own heartbeat keeping time with the world. She thinks of the river's hum and realizes it never stopped. It merely changed its form. "I can still hear the river," she says softly. "It is the same river," Boreas replies. "It flows beneath everything, beneath sound, beneath thought, even beneath sleep." She opens her eyes. The wind is calm, but she can see faint traces of movement in the air. tiny whirls of frost spiraling upward like breath caught in sunlight. She lifts her hand, and they gather around her fingers, forming delicate rings that pulse with faint blue light. "What do I do with what you've taught me?" she asks. "Do nothing," the wind says gently. "Listening is not a task. It is a way of being." A snowflake drifts past her face, so close she can see its pattern. 6 perfect arms, no two alike, yet all made of the same light. She remembers the sound of the flute, the world's breath turned into tone, and realizes that the snowflake, too, is music frozen in place. The voice continues, softer now. "Every day the wind will come, sometimes harsh, sometimes kind. When it speaks, do not resist. When it quiets, do not chase. Simply breathe, and let the song pass through you." She nods, though the wind cannot see. "And when I forget, then you will dream again." The words dissolve into the air like mist into dawn. Thalia sits there a long time, watching the play of light over the ice. The grove hums softly, not with noise, but with balance. Somewhere far away, a bird calls. A single note, pure and unhurried. It lands gently in the silence, becomes part of it, and fades. Eventually, she rises and walks back toward home. The path seems lighter now, as though each step is carried rather than made. The world does not press against her. It moves with her. The trees lean slightly, their branches making soft sighs that almost sound like words. By the time she reaches the cottage, the sun has risen higher. The air has warmed just enough to release the faint scent of pine and thawing wood. She pauses by the door, looking back at the grove. From this distance, she could almost believe nothing had happened, and yet she feels everything has changed. Inside, the hearth glows faintly. The kettle, left near the coals, sends a thin wisp of steam into the air. It curls upward in a perfect spiral before vanishing. She watches it go and smiles. On the table, her map lies where she left it. But when she leans closer, she sees something new once more. Faint patterns of frost forming along the rivers. Tiny notes of ice that shimmer and vanish as the warmth of the room reaches them. She runs her finger over the lines and whispers, "I hear you." The air moves slightly, just enough to stir her hair. She knows that touch. The wind outside hums through the eaves, low and tender. Carries no words, only presence. Thalia sits by the window, eyes half closed, and lets the sound fill the space between thoughts. Somewhere far above, the frozen stars are beginning to fade in the daylight, but they do not vanish. They remain, unseen yet unforgotten, listening to the morning that listens back. For a long time, Thalia stays there, breathing, hearing, remembering. And outside, the north wind moves on, gentle and sure, polishing the day until it gleams. Evening returns like a page turned by a careful hand. The day has thinned to silver, and snowlight lingers on rooftops and stones as if unwilling to leave the world entirely to the dark. In Thalia's cottage, embers breathe in their small red language, and the air carries that remembered scent of resin and frost. She sits by the window with the sky flute across her knees, listening for the shape of night as it settles. The grove has taught her, silence is not emptiness. It is form. It has corners and doors, It has paths one can walk if one is willing to own a gentleness large enough to hold them. Even now, as the wind turns in the eaves, she feels the room expand around the quiet, like a lantern making space for its own light. Outside, clouds gather from the north, their bellies dark with snow. The village has tied shutters, stacked wood, and salted steps. Fishermen have drawn their boats above the tide line. Women have laid out extra blankets and filled the house with broths that taste of memory. Everyone has heard the old stories about the north wind's harsher moods. Everyone knows how winter can test the hinge of a door, the patience of a roof, the courage in a chest. Thalia sets the flute upon the sill and presses her thumb to the inside of her ribs, where the crescent of melted ice left a warmth that never fully fades. I hear you, she thinks, not to the storm, but to the listening beneath it. I hear you as you are. The first flakes arrive before full dark. They are large, slow, and articulate, each one a sentence that ends without a period, leaving the air open for what comes next. Soon the air thickens, the edges of houses soften, and the road between cottages becomes a long white seam. From the grove, a thread of presence unfurls, so faint it could be mistaken for imagination. It touches the window pane the way a fingertip touches a sleeping brow. I am here, says a thought that is not words. Boreas, she breathes, and the name leaves her mouth like steam. Will it be hard? Only as hard as needed, only as soft as possible. She wraps her cloak and steps outside into a snow that is no longer a drift of separate flakes, but a single slow-making, the world revising itself in white. The cold accepts her as one accepts an honest guest. When she looks up, the sky is a bowl polished to the edge of black steel. Beyond its rim, the frozen stars wait with their steady patience, unseen but listening. She begins to walk toward the grove. The village is a hush of lanterns and shadows. People nod from doorways, watching, not calling, because the moment for speech belongs to roofs and rafters, to hinges and hearths. Thalia passes the square, where the well is capped against ice and a bell hangs ready. She touches the bell's rope with 2 fingers and feels its metal answering her touch with a low, sleeping chord. At the forest's edge, wind deepens, small currents threading between trunks, gathering in the long aisle of the path. It lifts her hair and coats her lashes with sugar snow. Branches, burdened but unbroken, bow and release their powder in quiet sighs. She follows those sighs like markers, until the columns of the old temple rise, white-shouldered, bearing the night. In the center, the basin is a disk of opal light. Even under the storm, the ice holds its lucid calm, the same perfect breath in, breath out she learned at the river's turning. She steps to the rim and places the sky flute upon the ice as one sets an oath on an altar. I have come, she whispers, to listen for all of us. The wind coils around the ring of columns. For an instant it takes on the suggestion of form, the faintest outline of a figure woven from direction and frost. A tilt of a head, the drift that would be a hand if a wind had hands. The storm pauses, not in the trees, not on the roofs, but in that deep interior where weather decides what kind of news to bring. Your village is within my care tonight, Boreas says. But care sometimes looks like trial. Will you hold the listening while I work? Thalia nods. Teach me to fall as snow falls. Then hear the hinge. The world leans. Not visibly, no wall tips, no tree lists, but inwardly. She senses the river beneath the ground tighten its slow chord. The grove's columns hum in an unseen register. Even her breath lengthens, then steadies into the same time as the world. She lifts the flute, and the mouthpiece finds her lips with the familiarity of a lullaby's first note. She plays no melody. She exhales presence. The sound that moves through the instrument is round and low, shaped to the size of roofs and rafters and the curve of hulls drawn up on shore. It is a circle of tone. It asks nothing. It offers space. Boreas moves outward from the grove. She feels him lean into the storm the way a gardener leans into bracken. Gentle, exact, unafraid of thorns. Gusts arrive with a firmness that would snap unready things. Behind them, a second current corrects their angle, sets them down easier. Snow that would heap into uneven weight now redistributes itself with small sifts and skates, settling into evenness. Drifts form not against doors, but along fences and empty ditches that can afford the burden. Under Thalia's breath, the village joins the chord. Roof beams recall their grain and share the load. Windows remember their flecks and do not shatter. The bell in the square holds its tongue because the moment for alarm has been replaced by the practice of listening. The sea, beyond the headland, hears and rolls its shoulder so that swell breaks farther out, and the sound that reaches shore is large but kind. Time changes texture. It does not pass. It accumulates, a soft deepening, like feather on feather in a long-making nest. Her hands do not tire. The note does not demand her lungs. It borrows their shape. She does not command the wind. She keeps open the room in which it works. When the storm reaches its full breadth, the frozen stars stir behind the clouds. Not visible, but present the way a promise is present. The sky itself seems to bow toward the listening they have made together. Then, as all honest efforts do, it begins to ease. First the pitch of the wind lowers, then its grain softens from ice to velvet. The snowflakes regain their separateness, becoming individuals again. Six-armed, specific, articulate. The trees rise from their slow bow. On the roofs, white settles in blankets without sharp edges. The columns relax. The ice in the basin becomes again a mirror that holds breath. Thalia lets her exhale become only exhale. The flute warms in her hands like a creature that has done its task and now wishes to sleep. She sets it on her lap and listens to the last phrases of the storm depart with dignity, like guests leaving without waking the house. Boreas returns to the grove as the darkest hour thins to a gelatin of blue. The presence that was everywhere gathers to a point just beside her. When he speaks, the ground does not tremble. Her ribs do. You held the room, he says. You let the world do what it knows. She smiles into the air. You were careful with them. Care is my only strength worth the name. She stands and turns to face the columns, the basin, the trees that have become her elders. Is this the end of winter? She asks. It is not a request. It is the soft curiosity that follows work honestly done. For now, Boreas answers. Winter always has other doors. But your village will sleep tonight. A long quiet gathers between them, full, not inert. Then Boreas moves, and the move is farewell-shaped. It is not a leaving in haste. It is a transition like a wave returning to the ocean that taught it. Must you go? The question leaves her like a flake, particular, delicate, willing to land where it is meant. Winds that linger too long become storms with no lesson, he says. I will be where I am needed, north of north, or in the hinge between two breaths in a house you have never seen. But what I am to you, you now are to yourself, and to those who sleep within the reach of your listening. He extends a motion toward the ice. Frost blooms at her feet in a design like the rim of a compass. The fern fronds and tiny stars she first saw on her windowpane. At its heart, a small depression forms, and within it crystal gathers. A new crescent, thinner than a thumbnail, bright with a blue so pale it is almost the memory of blue. For the waking world, he says, a marker of the circle you kept. It will melt and it will remain. Thalia kneels and lifts the crescent, cools her fingers, then warms them. When she holds it to the basin's surface, the ice recognizes itself and brightens, and for a moment, the mirror shows more than stars. It shows a village asleep beneath fair weight, a shore easing its waves with courtesy, a forest holding its snow with grace. It shows a girl with a flute and a wind with a kindness, and how neither is the maker of the other, only the space in which the other can be true. Then this is not an ending, she says. It is a way to keep beginning. Exactly. He rises, not up, but outward, his presence expanding until the whole grove seems to breathe. The columns shine with a faint aurora of their own. A fox pads into the ring and sits, head tilted, as if to witness the ceremony of a season exchanging hands. An owl turns once on its branch and does not fly. Its acceptance is a seal. Boreas's voice, softer now, blends with the hush. When the world grows loud, remember, you do not need to shout over it. You need only to make a room inside it. People will find you there. Sleep will find you there. Even storms will learn their manners. Thalia's throat tightens, not with grief but with a fullness too tender to name. Will I hear you again? When the night is glass and the stars are steady, listen to the line between two snowflakes falling. I will be that line. When a river turns because it has thought long enough, listen to the brim of that thought. I will be there. When breath becomes song without anyone meaning to sing, listen at the edge of that song. It will be enough. The presence thins. The last of him hangs like a clarity, a fresh-washed window in the body of night. Then even that becomes what all good lessons become, a way of seeing that no longer needs its teacher. Thalia stands alone in the ring, but not alone in the world. The sky above her shows the pale seam of dawn. She takes the flute, tucks the crescent into the small pocket sewn inside her cloak, and walks back toward the village while snow returns to falling as if it had never learned to do anything else. The square greets her with soft whiteness. Footprints cross in neat lines, neighbors checking neighbors, warmth seeking warmth. The bell is quiet, but she hears the chord inside it as clearly as if it had rung. At her door, snow has leaned itself politely against the threshold instead of shouldering it. She brushes a path with her sleeve and steps in. The house breathes her name in timber size. She sets the flute on the table. From a peg she takes her map. The rivers look different now, not because the ink has changed, but because the listening has made more room around them. At the top margin the faint silver script shows again, only for an instant, as the window gathers morning, where the world listens. She adds a single penciled circle at the bend of the river where she met the turning, then another small circle around the grove. Between them she draws a thin line. It is not a road. It is not a path others could follow by foot. It is the corridor inside a breath, the space between question and answer. She sets down the pencil and closes her eyes.